You do not move. You stand at the edge of the room, and you do not move, because moving now would be wrong. The magistrate's cup is still half full. His eyes have not yet found the wall, and the other man, the one whose name you were not told, is watching your hands. You have learned to know when you are being watched. The candle between them throws soft shadows across the lacquered table. Somewhere outside, a dog barks once and goes quiet. The room smells of rice wine, burning pine resin, and the particular stillness that gathers in rooms where powerful men make decisions. The magistrate says something. You do not register the words. You register the angle of his chin, tilted toward you, and you pour. The wine fills the cup without a sound. You step back. You smile. That is the whole of it. That is what you are here to do. And yet your hands are shaking. You have been shaking, in one way or another, since you were 9 years old. That was the year your name was entered into the register. The Joseon Registry, a list kept by the local government office, updated each season, passed between administrators like a ledger of grain or timber. You did not understand it then. You only understood that the women who came to your mother's house were very beautiful, and that they moved like they had rehearsed every step, and that your mother cried after they left. By the time you were 12, you had begun your training. This is Joseon. The year does not matter as much as the dynasty, and the dynasty is old and rigid, and knows exactly where you belong. The kingdom is ordered by a principle called Sedebu, the scholar gentry at the top, then commoners, then those below. You are below. You were born into the Cheonman class, the base people, and that is not a wound. It is simply weather, the kind you cannot shelter from, but there is a category even within your class that sets you further apart. You are a Kisaeng, and a Kisaeng is not merely poor. A Kisaeng is owned, not by a single person, but by a system, by a registry and an office and 1,000 years of precedent that says your body and your talent belong, first, to the state. They made you extraordinary, and then they made you theirs. You wake before the light, not because you are told to, though you are told to, but because years of this life have trained your body not to trust rest. Sleep is a loosening of the careful arrangement you maintain every waking hour, and even in sleep, some part of you remains alert. You rise from your sleeping mat. The room is small. Yours is smaller than the others because you are newer, and the hierarchy within the Kisaeng house is its own invisible architecture. Who gets the room with the south-facing window? Who receives the thicker winter blanket? Who is permitted to refuse a patron? You have learned to read these distinctions as fluently as you read the classical poems you practice each morning, because you do practice. Every morning, before the household stirs. That is perhaps the strangest cruelty of your life, that it made you educated. The older Kisaeng taught you to read Chinese characters when most women in the kingdom could not. You learned the geomungo, the 6-string zither, until your fingers bled, and then calloused, and then moved like water. You studied calligraphy and poetry, and the proper way to arrange flowers, and how to listen to a man speak about himself for 4 hours without letting your eyes go flat. You learned to compose verse. You learned to debate philosophy, lightly, in the way that makes a man feel he has been challenged without having been bested. You learned the names of every official who might pass through your province, their ranks, their temperaments, their vanities. You became, in the language the men use, accomplished. And being accomplished means being summoned. The summons come through the Kisaeng house manager, a woman called Dimidori, whose face you cannot read, and whose approval you need for everything. She decides which banquets you attend, which patrons you are assigned to, and whether the complaints that occasionally surface about you are recorded or quietly dissolved. She is not cruel. She is efficient. It took you a long time to understand that efficiency in your world feels exactly like cruelty. You are summoned to government banquets where officials drink themselves into sentiment, and you are expected to keep them comfortable. You are summoned to welcome delegations, to soften difficult evenings, to perform. Sometimes a single poem, composed on the spot, is expected. Your mind must always be ready. At these events, you are not permitted to speak first. You are not permitted to leave until released. You are not permitted to show fatigue or discomfort or the particular hollowness that comes from smiling for 6 hours without ceasing. And you must remember, you are not a slave. This is what they say. You are a Joseon. It is different. It is registered. There are rules that are supposed to protect you. Officials are not supposed to mistreat you. There are formal prohibitions. You have heard of women who lodged complaints with the magistrate's office and received hearings. You have also heard of women who lodged complaints and were never summoned again, which, in your world, means they starved. So you learn a different kind of protection. You learn to make yourself indispensable. Not to any one man. Attachment to one man is a trap because men are reassigned, promoted, disgraced, but to the room, to the evening. You become the reason the evening was good. You tell the story they will repeat to their colleagues. You compose the line of verse that the magistrate will claim as his own insight at the next banquet. You make yourself the thing they return to. It is, you have come to understand, a kind of power, the only kind available to you. But power and freedom are not the same thing. You know this the way you know your own reflection, with a flatness, an acceptance, that you stopped examining years ago. Your name is in the register. The register determines where you can live. It determines whether your daughter, if you have one, will be registered in turn. The Joseon designation passes through the mother, as though bloodlines were accountable, as though the register needed to eat. You do not speak of this to the patrons. You do not speak of this to anyone, really. There is a kind of language that Joseon use among themselves, shorthand, silences, the particular way someone sets down a cup that means do not ask me tonight. And in that language, some things are understood without words. The silence is not peace, but it is familiar. It is autumn when the young official arrives from the capital. He is maybe 25, newly appointed. He has the look of a man who was raised in books, long-fingered, slightly uncertain in his body, dazzled by things he is trying not to appear dazzled by. He is assigned to you for the welcoming banquet, and by the third cup of wine, he is asking you about the poem on the wall screen behind you. You tell him who wrote it. He asks if you have written anything of your own. The room is loud enough that no one else hears you. You watch him for a moment. Then you recite, quietly, 4 lines that have lived inside you for 3 years. You wrote them on the back of a practice sheet and then burned the practice sheet, because a Joseon who is perceived as ambitious is a Joseon who becomes inconvenient. He stares at you. He says, "That is extraordinary." You pour his wine and say nothing. He comes back the next evening, and the one after. He does not touch you. He seems, in fact, almost careful not to. He brings scrolls. He reads you passages and asks your interpretation. He argues with you about the meaning of a line of Shijing with the earnest desperation of a man who has found someone whose mind interests him more than his own opinions. You are careful. You are always careful. You know how these stories proceed. The young official with the literary soul who sees you as a person, who is different, who will find a way. You have watched other Joseon believe this. You have watched those other Joseon waiting, still waiting, as the official was promoted and transferred and married the daughter of a respectable family, as required, as always. But there is a night, the 4th or 5th, when he arrives late and sits down, and his face is different. His composure is gone. He tells you he has spoken to Midori. He tells you he has inquired, carefully, through the proper channels, about the possibility of taking you out of the register. A formal arrangement. He has the position now. It can be done. You look at him. You look at this young man with his long fingers and his genuine eyes and his belief that he is offering you something. And then you ask him, very quietly, very evenly, what the magistrate would say. The one you pour wine for every week. The one whose patronage is half your house income. The one who has made it clear, without words, in the way powerful men make things clear without words, that you are spoken for in a way that no official arrangement would erase. The young man's face shifts. He had not considered that. Of course, he had not considered that. You watch him understand, slowly, that there is an architecture here he cannot see from where he stands. That freedom is not a form filed with the office. That whatever he is imagining he can give you. The shape of your life was decided before either of you was born, and it will remain decided after he is transferred and married and old. He leaves before the candle burns down. You sit in the empty room for a long time. You do not cry. Crying would wrinkle the silk collar, and someone else's banquet begins in an hour. You arrange your expression. You stand. There is a word in the old texts for what you are. Hongsu. Walking water. Moving always, going nowhere, taking the shape of whatever vessel it is poured into. You read the word once in a poem composed by a Kisaeng who died 100 years before you were born. A woman whose name survived only because one of her patrons was important enough to have his correspondence kept. She wrote, "Do not pity the river for not choosing its banks." You used to think she was telling future women not to grieve. Now you think she was telling herself. The banquet begins. The magistrate's cup is empty. The candle has been replaced with a fresh one, and the room smells of pine resin and rice wine, and the absence of everything you did not say. You enter. You smile. You pour.